everyone, guess what? We do not have ugly swag. We have spaced out radio gear that you're going to want to wear. Why? Because no one wants to wear ugly clothing. So head on over to spacedoutradio.com and go shopping today. You'll be glad you did. And it's a great way to support our show. Once you get your gear, send us a picture of you rocking out in your SOR swag. spacedoutradio.com, shop there today, and make yourself look good.
Welcome to Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours radio show with me, your host, Mr. Rob G. It's going to be a fantastic show here tonight. We have Dr. David Gruder joining us here tonight. Awesome guy. We're going to get into his bio and everything in here in just a moment here. Want to go ahead and welcome everybody coming in here tonight. Let me go ahead and see who has come in first, given the gold position. Courtesy of Race Fan, says Kitty Catty Whack gets the gold tonight. Race Fan with the silver. The Roswell Alien coming in with that bronze medal. Appreciate you guys all coming in bright and early. We got the Roswell Alien saying this is going to be good, guys. I can agree with you. Definitely going to be, I think, a deep conversation, much needed in this community. I can't wait to jump into it, guys. We have, who else out there? As we said, Kitty Catty Whack coming on in. Also, Race Fan. Let's see who else has joined us. Robert Lamont Jr. Hey, Robert Lamont Jr. Excuse me. Thanks for coming on in. Appreciate you showing up. We got T-Bone, who just became a member for 12 months. Thank you so much, T-Bone, for coming on in and supporting the show here tonight. We have Mel WD40 getting us lubed up and ready to get into the show tonight. Appreciate you coming on in, Mel WD40. We got Kurt M out there. Kurt M, appreciate you showing on up here to the show tonight. We have, let's see, who else do we have? We have Kitty Catty Whack with the awesome super sticker. Thanks for your support here tonight. Also, the Flat Sixer, member for 13 months. We appreciate your love and support. Awesome stuff here. We got Miss Catherine Jones saying, hello, Mr. Rob G. Appreciate you coming on in. Paul DeMond said, Rob does rock. I appreciate that, Paul. You know, you got me going. Now I'm all pumped up to get the show going. Appreciate you coming in and showing love. Mark Eddy as well. Thank you for coming on in, Mark. Let's see. Who else do we have tonight? Hopefully I can get to everybody. Let's see. Yep, we got the Flat Sixer. We got Paul DeMond, Roswell Alien. We got you all in here, and we'll get the people who come in late on the next break. Guys, it's going to be a fantastic show. Once again, we have Dr. David Gruder for hours 1 and 2. Then we'll jump in Tales and Told, Mr. Person Mysteries, hour 3, as well as some other things that I have set up. It's going to be a surprise. It'll be a great show. Let's get it going right about now. Greetings, space travelers. Welcome home. You just tuned your dial to Spaced Out Radio, the only place where you can own the night. I'm your host, Mr. Rob G. Tonight, we're broadcasting on our terrestrial affiliates across North America, plus digitally on digital platforms all around the world. Don't forget, you can access our archives. They're absolutely free. YouTube.com/ at Spaced Out Radio. And while you're there, please consider hitting that subscribe button. Also, don't forget to follow us on X and Instagram at Spaced Out Radio and at Spaced Out Radio Show. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where the options are endless. You can stay up to date with SOR Newswire. You can get yourself some official Spaced Out swag. Plus, you can rock out to the man you hear right there, Mr. Ron Beaumont-Fidal, and oh so much more. It is going to be a fantastic show here tonight. We have Dr. David Gruder coming in talking humanity. We'll get into some of his details here in just a moment. Like I said, hours 1 and 2, hour 3, we're going to do Steve Stockton Tells and Told Missing Person Mystery, some UFO and weird news, and then we're going to talk AI. I put out a video on my channel recently talking about AI. The AI propaganda war has begun. So we'll be talking about that. Make sure you don't go anywhere. It's going to be a jam-packed show. But let me go ahead and get ready to bring our guest in here, Dr. David Gruder, who is a clinical and organizational psychologist, an 8 award-winning author, and a highly sought speaker, trainer, and trusted advisor. He is the founder of and CEO of Integrity Revolution. You got to have integrity, guys, which helps everyday people to world leaders create sustainable happiness, health, love, and success without sacrificing personal integrity or social responsibility. And I think that's a good way to go ahead and introduce him and bring him up on the stage. Dr. David Gruder, how are you, sir?
I'm happy. Thanks, Rob. It's a pleasure to be with you.
I am so glad to have you here. And as I told you before the show, I've been looking forward to this because I myself am a humanity-focused person. I believe that everything that we're doing here, and we talk about consciousness, a lot of these things that unite humanity, and I'm always looking for what is the best way we can move forward as humanity. Like, we talk about it, but I listen to you, and I hear a lot of maybe solutions or perspectives or options that we should be looking at, and that's kind of what I wanted to talk to you and focus on here tonight. So glad that you're here to join me, and we're going to go ahead and get started with some of the things that you have going. I was able to take a look at your channel there. So let's start with reimagining humanity's future and yours. If you wouldn't mind explaining to the audience, what is this all about? What is your mission? What brought you to even the point to where you came up with this idea?
Well, thank you. Reimagining Humanity's Future and Yours is actually the name of a show of mine. And the reason that I named it that is because as a futurist, I've been imagining humanity's future literally since childhood. And we know, you clearly know as well, that the crisis that humanity is in today calls for a whole new approach to resolving the divisiveness and the chronic stress and all the other problems that are besetting humanity and individual countries today. And so I've looked at the question of how do you integrate or harmonize our desire to be self-sovereign, our desire for personal freedom, with the fact, basically, that we are social animals, that we are designed to be in groups. We're designed for societies. So how do we get to be free in the context of society? How do we harmonize self-sovereignty and societal well-being? And that's what the whole thrust of my work is about, is providing the mindsets and the skill sets that make that harmony possible.
You have also talked about, and I think this adds to what, your current day perspective. You talked about experiencing crushing lows in life that lifted you to new realms of possibility. Can you explain how going through trauma opened your eyes? I know a lot of people go through trauma and they usually have some sort of awakening afterwards. How did this open your eyes?
Well, I've had my share of them. I can go into detail about any one or multiple, but the thing that I've learned about trauma as a psychologist and as a human being is that undesired and even unacceptable life experiences have come my way so that I can harvest gifts from those experiences, because only when I harvest gifts that are greater than my pain has been deep in trauma situations have I reached a place of equilibrium and love and gratitude even for the undesired experiences that I've had. And so if you want me to go into some of my bludgeoning into surrender experiences, I'm happy to share.
Well, if you wouldn't mind, because I think it definitely adds definitely more perspective for other people that might be going through the same thing.
Sure, sure. Well, how about if I share one from childhood and another from adulthood?
Sure.
Okay. So with childhood, I grew up on the high functioning end of the autistic spectrum. And when I was growing up in the 1950s and 1960s, there was no such diagnosis as high functioning autism. And so I was undiagnosed. But in hindsight, I realized that I grew up pretty much in a high functioning autistic family. Both of my parents were high functioning autistics. My kid brother was a full on childhood autistic. And at 9 or 10 years old, I came to the conclusion that my parents didn't understand what the world was like and how the world worked. And I was in the midst of being horrifically bullied and beaten up because as an autistic, I couldn't read a social cue to save my life. So I didn't know what I was doing to irritate other kids to the point where they would ridicule me and beat me up and call me names and all kinds of things like that. So I decided out of a child's mind at 9 or 10 years old that it was on my shoulders to figure out how the world worked for my parents, for my brother, and for me. And that felt really traumatic because the script I was living from in elementary school and really through junior high school and on into the first half, at least, of high school was a victim script. I was an innocent victim. Stuff was being done to me that felt horrible and painful and bad and nasty. And I didn't know what I was doing to bring that on. So I thought of myself as an innocent victim. So that's the childhood story that I can share. I'll share an adulthood story in a second. Do you have any follow-up questions on that before I move forward?
Well, being that it was the 1950s, right, and it was a different place, America, and you had the society was different. How did society also, aside from ridicule kids ridicule today, they've always ridiculed,
Oh yeah.
but how did society growing into a world that was different than is today, how did that also help shape you, the time period?
Well, one of the big themes in the 1950s, which of course as a child I didn't fully understand, but I came to understand it in hindsight, was conformity. That there was a version of the American dream that was called the American dream that was installed into the psyche of United States citizens and then spread around the world, which was essentially a faulty happiness formula that revolved around conforming to a version of the quote unquote good life that the people in power wanted us to accept, because if we accepted their version of happiness, we would become absolutely addicted consumers of stuff. And so there was a lot of stuff around conformity on many levels, including a lot of stereotyping about what boys were like and what girls were like. And I was the kind of boy who I was just as happy throwing a football around as I was jumping rope. And that didn't fly well with my peers because the jumping rope part earned me the title of being a sissy. And so it was very confusing for me to try to figure out what the rules were when I was a high functioning autistic, and those rules didn't come naturally to me. I didn't understand them in a natural way. I had to work to figure this stuff out.
How did you evolve with the times? Because I know that we go from the 1950s and 60s where things were a certain way. I think everybody will think about how it was back then, but then you evolve into where society is evolving, 70s, 80s, 90s. How did you evolve with the times? Like, how did your message and the thoughts that you were having about being awakened, I guess, evolve with the times?
Right. Well, where it first started for me was when I was about 6 years old. And so I grew up in the New York City area, first half of childhood in New York City proper. And my parents took me when I was 6 years old on a tour of the United Nations in Manhattan. And of course, at that age, I would never have been able to discern anything about the politics of the United Nations or any of that stuff. What I walked away with was a feeling of having come home to the notion that first and foremost, I was a citizen of the world. And inside of that, I was an American citizen. So it wasn't that I was forsaking my own country, but my patriotism got carved as of 6 years old, where it was nested. My American patriotism was nested inside of my humanity patriotism. And so then in 1964, the New York World's Fair 64 and 65 was going on, and I was privileged to be able to go to the World's Fair a number of times. And that's when the spark was triggered in me about being a futurist, because up until that point, I was 10 years old when the New York World's Fair opened. Up until that point, I would lie on the grass in the summertime and look up at the sky, and silently in my head, I would call out to the ETs to take me away from here. I didn't want to be on this planet. I wanted nothing to do with this place. I was pleading with them in my mind's eye to take me away from this planet. And so at the New York World's Fair, I finally had the beginnings of an alternative to that, because I started to get a sense that there was a positive future that could happen with humanity. And in fact, I still to this day have a pin that I got at the New York World's Fair that says, I have seen the future. And so that then led to 1966, when I was 12 years old and the original Star Trek television series started airing. I was instantly a Trekker, or Trekkie, or whichever term you want to use. I was instantly addicted because that was the first exposure I had to seeing a utopian kind of future that I felt really good about. And then in 1969, when I was 15 years old, my parents sent me to Woodstock, which changed my worldview profoundly. Now, they didn't know what they were sending me to. Is this too much story? Should I keep going, or?
You should definitely keep going. I just want to say real quick, Woodstock, I'm jealous because I often feel like I'm out of place. I feel like I should have been around during that time. I think I should have been, but yeah, go ahead and continue.
Yeah, well, that's very, very possible. I was very involved in music and drama growing up, and actually music saved my life as a kid. If I didn't have those ways of performing and didn't have the musical talents that I had, I probably would have been a childhood suicide. I was that depressed otherwise, except when I was performing. So my parents somehow managed, they weren't wealthy, but they somehow managed to pull together enough money in the summertime to send me off to a camp for the performing arts up in the Berkshires of Massachusetts. And the spring of 69, the camp director sends a note home to the parents saying, for the first time in the camp's history, we're going to have an optional field trip to a music and arts festival in upstate New York. Do you want to send your kid? So my parents naively look at me and say, "What do you think?" And I'm thinking, well, this sounds pretty cool. So I thought I was going to Woodstock for the music, and the music was over the moon by and large. But what I couldn't have known beforehand was that the experience I had being in the midst of 500,000 people who joined together to show the world that we could have each other's backs. We could love each other and support each other and look out for each other, even if only for 3 days, changed my worldview. It gave me a sense that, oh, we can have a positive influence in the world. We can make a positive difference.
And see, I have a YouTube channel where I consider myself a pro humanitarian. My channel is strictly focused on the positive progression of humanity. That's why I feel like I would have fit in better in those times. For you, being that you were able to experience a moment like Woodstock, where you're obviously around a lot of people who are probably seeing things the same way that you are, how has that changed today? Because it seems like, when I talk about this subject, or you don't really find a lot of people who specifically want to focus on humanity itself. They're too busy in society doing their business that they can't step outside and kind of look at humanity as a whole and have some sort of vision for it. I've been told by a couple people that some of your ideas about humanity and the optimism that you have is pie in the sky, right? When I think if I would have said the same thing at Woodstock, they would have all understood what I was saying. So how have you seen it evolve from there? Because it seems like it regressed, or people are more afraid to kind of embrace this part of it.
Yes. And that's because, at least at that time period, because of the societal traumas that were coming down. So in 63, John F. Kennedy, President Kennedy, was assassinated. And even though I was only 9 years old, a couple of months away from my 10th birthday, I was devastated. I was absolutely beside myself. And then in 1968, within a month of each other, Martin Luther King was assassinated, and then Bobby Kennedy was assassinated. And the wind got pulled out of the sails of those of us who were daring to believe that we could create a better future. Then Woodstock happens, and it rekindles that belief. Yes, we can make a difference. We can create a better future. Then what happens in 1970 was the Kent State Massacre. And when those kids were killed by the National Guard at Kent State, I believe to this day, at the direction of the then director of the FBI, J. Edgar Hoover, that was the nail in the coffin. That was when the human potential movement that was emerging in the 1960s fractured. And it fractured into 3 different groups. There was one group that said, well, obviously we can't change the world after all. All we can do is work on ourselves. So I'm just going to become who I think I am. And if you don't like that, that's your problem. And then the second group was the people who were saying, no, it's all about love. It's all about relationship. It's all about connection. And if I have to give up me to be loved by you, so be it. That was the birth of the codependency tendencies, and at least them becoming more well known. They have existed throughout the history of humanity, of course. And then the third group was a group that I refer to, and the term I'm about to use has a negative meaning in some circles, but I mean this positively. The do-gooders, the people who said, we're not going to be thwarted by what J. Edgar Hoover and other people who were trying to kill off the human potential movement did. We can still change the world, and we are actually angry at the self-developers because they've become all self-absorbed and narcissistic. They're getting in the way of us making changes to improve the world. So they're actually part of the problem, and we can help change the world without working on ourselves. Thank you very much. So we had these three different groups, the self-improvers, the connectors, and the do-gooders, who were all splintered from each other, even though during the 60s, we were trying to pull those three aspects of being human, authenticity, connection, and impact, together to make a whole human being.
Do you think it seems that might have been purposely done? Do you feel like it was a purposeful suppression of a humanity movement? Because essentially that's what we're trying to do today, is to get something that resembles that, where we realize that we're human beings and that we're all more similar than not alike, as far as the racism and all that goes. Do you feel like that was an intentional thing to quash that movement? Because I feel like had it been able to grow and continue on till today, we could potentially be in a whole different world.
Yes, I think so. And I think there are a number of strands to that. One was the people who were terrified of and angry about the civil rights movement. And another was the people who were terrified of women coming into their own power, what was originally called the women's liberation movement in the 60s. And then even more powerfully, the people who had a lot of money and and their money was dependent on making huge profits in business. They became terrified because the conformity of the 1950s, that was all about overconsumption, over-consumerism, was being replaced in the 60s by an attitude that had a negative perspective about materialism. We didn't care about material stuff. We cared about our inner world. We cared about changing the outer world. Materialism wasn't as compelling to us, and that part terrified an awful lot of people who were in a lot of power in the business world.
Man, that so much aligns with what they're doing. You see so many examples of that happen. And I always talk to people about how they rather have us separated and segregated. And the moment that they see us unite and come together and realize that, hey, we're human beings and we should all be coming together for this movement, then they want to do things to try to quash it.
Yes.
That's sad, but it's what we're dealing with today. We're actually going into the first break here of the night, guys, right here with Dr. David Gruder. It's going to get deep tonight, guys, so make sure you don't go anywhere. Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours Radio Show. We'll be back. All right, and clear. And as you see, I don't know if you noticed, I have the Jimi Hendrix up here in the back and my
I
Led Zeppelin.
did. And Led Zeppelin, yes.
Man, my mother, and they're from that era, 70s, where they were teenagers and coming into adulthood. And they used to always tell me about that time. We would always listen to music from that era. And I saw Woodstock and I saw what type of atmosphere it was. And I was just like, man, I was born in the wrong time. But what I can do is I can try to do my part to help try to bring something like that back, bring that feeling back, right? And that's kind of why I do this show. That's the reason why I do the show and have decided to become a host. It was never in the cards for me, but strictly there was a moment where the voice said to me, do something for humanity. I didn't know what that was, right? I was going to go and teach some kindergarten kids. I was like, maybe I can help shape the young minds of the world. That was my first thought. Then I was like, wait, I don't know if I want to deal with bad kids. So I kind of took a break for a minute, and then doors started opening and kind of put me in positions. Then I started realizing what it was that I could do, doing my part to try to help advance humanity. And that's why it's awesome having you here tonight, because your perspective on this and a lot of the things you're saying resonated with me so much to where I'm going to watch a lot more of your content and videos, because I just feel like, you know, we connect. It's like you have been to places that I haven't been, and you have maybe some information that could help me, you know, ascend into where I'm trying to get to, and figure out how I can necessarily help humanity. So you're doing God's work, sir, and appreciate you coming in and having this conversation with me. Even if it's not necessarily about aliens, guys, we will be getting into some talk of that a little bit later here tonight, so make sure you don't go anywhere for that, because apparently Dr. David Gruder is interested in the subject, and you just heard him say that he was calling out to ETs and just hoping they would come and take them. And I'm sure that resonates with a lot of people out there. But we'll be getting back into all that here tonight. So make sure you don't go anywhere. Let me welcome some other people who snuck in after we got started here tonight. Jessica S., appreciate you coming in. Amy W.C., appreciate you showing up. Kim Jellin, I see you out there. Thank you so much. Who else? Matt Gudka. Hey, Matt Gudka, thanks for coming in. Let's see, who else showed up? Tardy. Who's tardy here? Let me see. Jerry Carter, did I call you out? If not, you did say yes. There was a lot of love at Woodstock. Were you there, Jerry Carter? Let me know. Let's see. Stargazer said, tripping on acid for days, and Jimmy plays a sunrise solo. I bet that was epic. We have the videos to go back and watch, and I have watched them. They're awesome. Also interviewed a guy named Jimmy Blue, who does Jimi Hendrix. I don't like to call it impersonation. Tribute. Jimi Hendrix tribute. And he's really awesome. Let's see. Benno from Oz, I know you're out there. There you go. Wait, let me see here. Yeah, just lost your Benno. Oh, there you go. Benno from Oz, appreciate you coming on in. Let's see. Also, you guys know how it goes. Get your questions together for the second hour, or put them in all caps so I can see them, and we will pose them to the doctor tonight. And I think we might be current. Yep. Okay, we are current. We have about 2 minutes left before we come back from break. Make sure you take a moment too, please, and go out. If you're on YouTube, look right under the screen. There's a like or dislike button. Please hit either or. We would just love to know how you feel about the show. Also, please as well leave a comment. Leave a comment, because other people like to come to the video, read the comment, see what other people thought about the show, their opinions, and I like to read them too. So make sure you put your comments in there as well, and we definitely appreciate that. Kim Jellin, he got the smooth voice, Rob G. Do. Oh, okay, I understand that, and I appreciate you, Kim Jellin. Thank you so much. You're awesome. Awesome sauce. Right, about 30 seconds, guys. Oh, Amy WC says, a friend just published a book on his interviews of students at Kent State. Wow, nice. He lived there and was a journalist, kept them all these years. Awesome stuff, Amy WC. Synchronicity tonight. 5 seconds. Come up, man. Thank you for coming in. Here we go. All right, everybody. Welcome back. Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours radio show. We are in the first hour, back half of the first hour already. We're kind of going quick here with our guest, Dr. David Gruder, talking about humanity. We're going to be talking about a book that he has as well, The New IQ. He's just checking all the boxes here for us tonight as far as humanity goes. Deep is where we're going. We're going deeper this half hour, so make sure you don't go anywhere. If you miss anything, hop in the archives. They're absolutely free as we jump back into the conversation. So you, Dr. David Gruder, are a clinical and organizational development psychologist. Can you explain to our viewers and listeners what that is exactly?
Sure. Well, the clinical psychology side is about psychotherapy. And the organizational development side of my field is about helping leaders and businesses and nonprofits and other organizations function well together. So it's more like group dynamics rather than individual dynamics. And so my career has been at the intersection of self-development and culture development. I'm basically a societal psychotherapist, if you will. And so I've blended the clinical psychology and the organizational development psychology approaches into an unusual package that unifies self-development and organizational development and societal development.
How long has it been since you specifically focused on the humanity aspect of this? How long have you officially been in this field of trying to shape things for humanity?
Well, since the 1970s, I was the director of a crisis intervention center and hotline that served a county in upstate New York. And so I started doing kind of helping work related to humanity starting at a pretty young age. And one of the turning points for me was actually as an undergraduate. About 10 years after I was at the World's Fair, I had the privilege of taking a history course that was my favorite all-time history course. It was called History of the Future, where we were trained to be futurists.
All right. And can you explain what a futurist is?
Sure. A futurist is someone who looks at past trends and current trends and weighs those against newly emerging developments in order to forecast how things are going to go in the near future and the more long-term future. Or the other version of a futurist is someone that's more of my approach to being a futurist, which is about seeing the potential in humanity and crafting a path forward that helps that potential emerge more fully and more quickly and more effectively.
So in that definition, that it checks some boxes for me there as well, because I must be a futurist then, because I sit here and I say on this channel all the time when we're trying to figure out things that have been put on our plate, especially in the UFO field, a good tool to use is to be able to weigh on historical data to be able to try to determine what it is that you're dealing with now. That's essentially what you just said. So for me, this checking a lot of boxes, and it's very validating. And I really, I appreciate you adding some perspective to that and kind of clearing things.
I'm glad. And there's one other thing I want to validate for you that you said earlier, which was about feeling like in some ways you were a fish out of water, that you were born in the wrong generation.
Yes,
well,
sir.
Everyone that I've ever met, no matter what age they are, no matter what generation they grew up in, if they are like you and me, if they're forward looking, if they're futurists, whether consciously or not consciously, they feel like they were born at the wrong time because they're seeing things from the past that might have been pretty cool to be part of, and they're seeing possible futures for humanity that they'd rather be living in than current situations. So I just want to validate your sense of essentially being in the wrong generation, all of us who are future thinkers feel like we're in the wrong generation.
Wow, I appreciate that. I really do. And as well, another question I would have for you, especially with me stating that when I talk to people about this, there are some people that get it. Like I have a community. In my community, I think there are a lot of the people that are there understand and have this same perspective. And it's a smaller community than what we're dealing with right here on Spaced Out Radio. But I value that small community because I know these are all critical thinkers and these are all people who are willing to have that conversation. And so like we're doing here tonight. So what I want to ask is, I know once the 70s pass, once you get past Woodstock and we get into this whole new era, the 80s were kind of weird and crazy. You get into the 90s, there are not really a lot of people who are at least showing that they focus or their perspective is to try to better humanity. So when you're, doing this work through these decades and you come across individuals who might tell you that your perspective or view is pie in the sky, like, how do you deal with that? What steps do you take? Like, how do you combat that and stay committed to the goal?
That's a wonderful question. And as you might guess, I've gotten a lot of feedback over the decades about my ideas being pie in the sky. But I've only gotten that feedback from two types of people. One type of person is someone who's so locked into their own worldview and their own self view that if their fundamental beliefs were challenged, they wouldn't know who they were and they would go into complete terror. I refer to that condition as paradigm attachment disorder. And I'm not in the world to terrify people. I mean, some people get scared even though I'm not trying to scare them. But I don't wake up in the morning thinking to myself, how can I scare people today? And so the people who are really locked in their old paradigm and have no interest, in fact, are terrified of the possibility of shifting out of that paradigm, I don't try to convince them. I don't try to quote unquote help them because it wouldn't feel like help to them. It would feel like shaming or like challenging or like criticizing them. So that's one group. And I'm not trying to change them. They'll come to their own clarity when and if they're ready. The other group that says this is pie in the sky are people who are actually saying, I really love what you're saying. I really love what you stand for, but I don't see the pathway forward to bringing it about. Can you show me how to do that? And those are the people that I really talk to.
Awesome. What would be, I wanted to ask you this earlier, but what is your view of society, the manufactured society that we're all born into? What is your view of that? And I know being a humanitarian, I guess is what I'll call you, I know you're looking from outside the bubble because I know I'm outside the bubble as well. A lot of us are.
Yeah.
How would you define society and the control mechanisms that are in place there?
Well, the way I would define society and the control mechanisms is based on the writings 100 years ago of the father of modern public relations, who was a profoundly powerful figure in the 20th century, even though most people have never heard of him. And I'll tell you his name in a second. But the reason that most people never heard of him is that he viewed himself as being part of what he called in his books that are available to this day, the invisible government, which in his words pulled the strings of the minds of the American people. So what he did in his books, his name was Edward Bernays, not spelled like the sauce, but spelled Bernays. And I did a whole TED talk on him. And what he wrote about was the step-by-step procedures for accomplishing what he called manufactured consent, which is manipulating people into supporting products, services, causes, or candidates while thinking they're doing that out of their own free will. You know what his most famous book was that he published in 1928 or 29? It's still available on Amazon to this day. Propaganda. So we are in a society that operates primarily from the game plan of Edward Bernays and people who followed in his footsteps outside the United States, to manipulate the psyches of people in their own country or in their own spheres of influence. And the reason Bernays, by the way, had such powerful methods, and he was an advisor, by the way, to virtually every American president, both Republican and Democrat, from Woodrow Wilson at the end of World War I in the 19 teens, all the way up to when Bernays died in the 1990s during Bill Clinton's term as president of the United States. He was a darling to business and politics. His power, the power of what he developed, he was standing on the shoulders of his uncle's understanding of how the psyche works. Edward Bernays' uncle was Sigmund Freud.
Wow. And it's a lot of synchronicity here because you talk propaganda, and I'm actually doing a segment after you leave tonight on the AI propaganda war, which has begun, which is a whole nother thing. But you have the Center for Enlightened Self-Sovereignty. What exactly is that?
Right. That is the organization that I have utilized to pull all together all of my life's work, because I've been operating in a lot of different market segments over the course of my career, from self-development to training World Trade Organization ambassadors. So I've been all over the map, and that doesn't serve me very well at this point in my life as an elder. So I've been pulling all of my intellectual property, all of my life's work under one umbrella, and that's called the Center for Enlightened Self-Sovereignty. And its objective is to help the next species of humanity emerge that I call Homo spiritus, human spirits, in contrast to Homo sapiens, which is human animals, right? And so the Center for Enlightened Self-Sovereignty helps people become Homo spiritus and helps to finally harmonize self-sovereignty, personal freedom, and the common good, which I call societal well-being, rather than having those two things, personal freedom and the common good, be at war against each other the way things are right now in our polarized society.
So Homo spiritus, does that connect in any way to like elevating consciousness? Is it still humans in the physical form, but just enlightened or enhanced consciousness?
Yes, exactly. It's where, instead of identifying ourselves through our human animal nature, we understand that we are human spirits. We're conduits of higher love, wisdom, and power in the physical universe. So we don't ignore the fact that we're in our body, but it's not our biological impulses that are the boss of us. It's higher love, wisdom, and power that we're conduits of in helping bring about, if I can shorthand it this way, heaven on earth.
Okay. Yeah, and we're into all that stuff here. So this definitely translates to a lot of what we talk about. If you had to look probably know the answer to this, but if you're looking over eras with the work that you've been doing since the 70s, which era do you think has been the most challenging era to work in trying to attempting to get this message across?
Well, they've all been challenging for me. In the 70s, I was an administrator for the first professional organization in the field of integrative health and medicine, which back in those days was called holistic health, and got all kinds of pushback from conventional physicians and psychologists in the 70s. So that was difficult in the 70s and 80s. And then that finally caught on in the 1990s because hospitals ultimately figured out that more and more people were wanting holistic and integrative approaches. So they figured out that they were losing out on a profit center if they didn't have their own center for integrative medicine. So it was an uphill climb through the 70s and 80s. And then in the 1990s, I became the founding president of an international nonprofit that is the kind of the umbrella organization for a family of specialty areas in psychology that blends Eastern and Western approaches in psychotherapy. It's called energy psychology. And the pushback against that, which happens to this day by many conventional psychologists, they think it's woo-woo quackery and has nothing to do with psychology when it has everything to do with psychology and elevating humanity. So there hasn't been a decade where I haven't struggled.
Okay. And I thought it was going to be a different answer, but that's a great answer that you gave. So let me be more specific in this question. How do you think what steps do you think you would take or are taking currently to deal with the current era that we're in, when it just seems like things couldn't get any worse? And, this is really a time where I feel like, and why I like to have these conversations, because I feel like, especially now, humanity needs that uplift. They need that way out. They need that open door. And I think like your work provides that type of open door. And I'd like to see people go through that door. So what specific things are you doing in this current era to try to reshape where it is that we go?
Well, a combination of keynotes and training programs and business consulting and leader development and all kinds of different things, but they all revolve around the same focus, which is that the shift that we need today in our understanding of human potential is a shift from the first version of human potential, which was in the second half of the 1900s and at the 20th century. And that was reuniting mind, body, and spirit. And that was a very important developmental phase where we were working on being less split inside ourselves, where mind, body, and spirit were reunited. But that reuniting doesn't go far enough in today's world because of all of the amplified craziness going on. And the human potential movement has lagged behind in shifting from an orientation that's mind, body, and spirit, which is basically me, me, and me, to an orientation that understands a whole human being is 1/3 me, which is authenticity, 1/3 we, which is connection or relationship, and 1/3 us all, which is impact, having a positive influence in whatever our spheres of influence are. So today, our version of human potential needs to grow out of thinking that human potential is only reuniting mind, body, and spirit, and into reuniting me, we, and us all as a way of being whole and complete as human beings.
And I know, and I heard you say that piece before, and I know that ties to when you talk about integrity and three
Core
pillars.
drives. Yes.
Okay. So would you mind speaking to that? I'm an integrity guy all day, and I believe it's integrity over everything. And I value integrity, and I feel like a lot of people out there should. Can you speak about your perspective and how you tie integrity into what you just spoke about, the me, we, and us all?
Sure. I'll share it on a personal level. The bludgeoning into surrender experience that I didn't share earlier was when I was 48 years old and my first marriage crumbled, even though it was viewed by me and it was viewed by everyone around us as being the bulletproof marriage. And I was utterly and completely devastated by that, and came to realize as I was recovering from the pain of that divorce and turning that pain into gifts, that I had been out of integrity because my version of integrity that I grew up with was social responsibility, being in integrity as a citizen with society and with doing good in society. But what had happened for me as a younger adult was that I had become so purpose driven, so mission driven, so impact driven that I came last. I figured, well, I'll take care of me later. I'm not important. Making a difference is what's important. And I came to understand as I was recovering from my divorce that integrity is three-dimensional. There's self-integrity, and I had become profoundly self-neglectful. There's relationship integrity, and even though I was faithful in my marriage, my heart shut down in my marriage because I was so overextended in trying to do good in the world that I became personally depleted. And when I became depleted, my heart closed down. So there's self-integrity, there's relationship integrity, and there's collective integrity. There's the group integrity part, the impact part. And so as I was writing what was at that time going to be my next book, the New IQ, that book on restoring integrity, I came to realize that I had deteriorated into one-dimensional integrity. I was great in the societal integrity realm, but I had become horrible with self-integrity, and to the point where I actually gave myself prostate cancer, which I've completely recovered from now without any medical intervention.
Wow, awesome.
But it was an inevitable outgrowth of prolonged self-neglect that manifested with those particular symptoms, or with that particular part of my body going haywire. And so this whole notion of integrity being three-dimensional is really important, because these three core drives of authenticity, connection, and impact we see in the youngest of children. They're wired into us. And I can explain that more, but I think we may be getting to the next break.
We are. You're on top of it. We are definitely coming up to the last break of the hour here. Yes, guys, it's getting very, very interesting. Dr. Gruder is dropping knowledge on us here tonight. And I definitely want to make sure that your questions get answered. I see you guys out there chatting, so make sure that you put any questions in all caps. I did have, let me see, one question real quick here. What do you envision, if you could, 10 seconds, what do you envision Dr. Gruder's legacy to be, if you could put it in 2 words or 3 words?
Healing humanity, repairing the world.
I like that. We're going to go ahead and jump into the final break, or the final break of the hour here with Dr. David Gruder and me, Rob G, on After Hours. We'll be right back after the break.
Conversations that move the needle. You're listening to After Hours with Mr. Rob G on the only place where you can own the night. Spaced Out Radio. Spaced Out Radio. You've tuned your dial to the right frequency.
All right, we're clear, Doctor. I'll see you back here in 5 minutes.
Okay.
All right. All right, everybody, welcome back. Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours radio show. We are in now after hour number 2, back with our guest, Dr. David Gruder. We'll be back from radio in about 30 seconds here. You know, guys, this is the hour for questions. Please make sure you put them in caps. Let's come up with some good ones for the doctor tonight. You see, we're getting deep. Let's go deep, guys. Just come on, let's do it. He's here tonight. We won't have him tomorrow. So make sure you put some really good ones out there that we can pose on the back half of this hour. And we'll be coming back here in about 10 seconds. Get ready. It's going to fly by, guys. Here we go. All right, everyone. Welcome back. Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours radio show. We're in after hour number 2, and we're talking humanity's future with Dr. David Gruder, getting into some really good stuff here. Make sure if you miss any of this conversation, you just rewind or hop in the archives because they don't cost anything. They're absolutely free. You can find them at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio as we get ready to hop back into the show. So now, you know, we set the foundation, and you know, I think what we've talked about can easily, and it does overlap into a lot of the things that we're dealing with now, because I'll just take a step back. One reason why I'm into this space is because I'm, you know, hoping for a positive outlook for humanity. I believe in this moment we're in now that we have the ability to redirect. There's only certain times in humanity's history that we've ever had moments where we could literally shift the direction, and we're in that moment right now. And it comes to dealing with what we're coming to find out is an extraterrestrial presence. Believe it or not, sounds wild, but we have things visiting here, intelligences from somewhere else. And in the moment that we have to confront that or deal with that, there's going to be ontological shock. And I think we're going to need all the psychologists in the world to come together and maybe form some sort of group that helps people get through that experience. So I wanted to start with, because you did talk about when you were younger, you know, you were calling out to the ETs. I didn't prompt that. You said it on your own. You were calling and hoping they would take you. So let's take a step back and talk about your perspective on this whole thing. You know, did you ever have anything that you experienced in your younger life in relation to something weird that you may have seen in the sky?
Yeah, I had one experience that might have been a sort of close encounter. Despite my praying for the ETs to come and take me, I have no conscious recollection, at least, of any visitation. But one summer, my family was out in the country, and this one night, in the middle of the night, the horses in the area were going crazy. They were just really unhappy. They were whinnying in a very distressed kind of way. And the next day, I heard adults talking about this light that had come down from the sky and had landed in a cornfield near where we were, and they were talking about what seemed like a craft having landed, and they were explaining that that's why they thought the horses were going crazy. So that was about as close as I ever came personally to that kind of experience. But I've had other non-normal experiences with people who have died, people on the other side, non-physical presences that I've dealt with, both benevolent, kind and loving, and also malevolent.
I'd love to hear about those. If you wouldn't mind diving into those stories, that'd be excellent.
Sure. Which part of that?
Let's get them both,
Anything?
because I think
Okay.
there's a yin and a yang. There's a lot of people out there when we talk about the subject that only feel that there's benevolence out there, but then there's people who have talked about instances of malevolence. I say there's a little bit of both going on, so it'd be cool to hear, you know, both sides of that, your experience.
I'll give you one of both then. The The first was a positive experience. It happened for me in 1988 when my father died. And in the months following my father's death, my mother was in very, very deep grief. She was feeling very, very stuck. And I had always hoped up until that point in my life, having read about near death experiences and the notion of life after death and all of that, I had hoped to have experience with that directly. So this one day, my father comes to visit me. My dead father comes to visit me. And he
Wow.
says to me, David, I have a message for your mother. Are you willing to give it to her? And I said to him, of course, yes. And he then gives me this message to give to my mother that sounds like complete gibberish. It makes no sense at all. And I say that to my dad, and I say to him, I don't understand what you're talking about. And he says to me, that doesn't matter. Your mother will understand. So I proceeded then, after that encounter with him, to call up my mom. I was living where I live now in San Diego, California. My mom was alive at that point, living in New York. I call her up. We've had discussions about these kinds of things, so I didn't have to warm her up to it. I just, right out of the gate, I say to her when she answers the phone, Mom, I have a message from Dad. Would you like to hear it? Because I don't deliver any of this non-normal stuff without permission. And he says, yes, of course. So I proceed. I don't say anything to her about, I don't understand what this means. I just faithfully deliver this message to her as my father had given it to me. My mother bursts out in tears, but the good kinds of tears, tears of relief. And after her tears subsided, I said to her, Mom, did you actually understand that message? Because at that point, I said to her, I have no clue what this meant. It sounds like gibberish to me. She says, absolutely. This was your father's way of telling me that he releases me to love again.
Wow.
Never in a million years would I have derived that meaning from that gibberish. And I realized in that moment that my father had gifted my mother and me. He had gifted my mother with a message she needed to hear in order to move out of her grieving, which did happen for her after that. And he had given me a gift, because if he had given me a message to give to my mom that made sense to me, I would have dismissed it as, my unconscious mind that wanted to soothe my mother and help her overcome her grief, that my unconscious mind made up the message. But because it was complete gibberish, I couldn't tell myself that and have it be credible. The only explanation there was for me was that it was a transmission from beyond me.
Wow. Were you open to past life prior to that?
Yes, I was very open to the notion of past lives, but I had not had direct experience with past lives or with people who had passed over onto the other side until my father's visitation. Since then, I talked to dead people, but never before then.
Wow, that's if anything, that's a confirmation moment for sure. There's no denying that right there, especially with the message was delivered and she understood exactly what it was. That's deep and powerful. When you look at the malevolent side,
Mhm.
let's talk about what happened there.
Sure.
I'd love to hear it.
Well, in the 1990s, when there was still enough room in my schedule to provide psychotherapy in addition to all of the business consulting and leader development and keynotes and training programs and consulting I was doing, I had a client who actually happened to be a mental health professional himself, who, after a while of working with me, finally developed the courage to tell me that he felt as though he had been satanically ritually abused as a child. And he thought he was making it up. He thought he was crazy for having that belief. And I said to him, well, look, let's just go down the rabbit hole and we'll see what's there, and we won't prejudge anything. Maybe so, maybe not, but we'll go where it takes us and we'll see what it reveals. So over time, he started to recall specific incidents in a specific location where the satanic ritual abuse occurred. And so I encouraged him to go back to find that place where he had grown up to see if it was there. And he did. And he found that place out in the woods. And the interior of this shack had still scrawled into its wood, into its walls, all kinds of satanic symbols. So he felt absolutely possessed. He felt as though they had installed explosive, psychologically explosive devices in him. That it's called in the satanic ritual abuse world implants, that it had been implanted with those things, and that if he dared to try to remove them, they would explode. And he finally says to me, I think I need an exorcism. And I said to him, well, that sounds like it might be called for. So I'll look into it and see if I can find someone who's an expert in exorcisms to do that with you. And he says, no, you don't get it. The only person I am going to trust to do an exorcism with me is you. And I look at him and I say, I've got no training in exorcism. And he says, well, get some, because you're the only one I'm going to allow to do this with me. So I got trained in exorcism and did that process with him. And that was the turnaround for him. That's when he healed. That's when he stopped feeling like there were implants in him that were going to explode if he tried to get free of the satanic ritual abuse. So in the process of liberating the negative, sinister energy that had been implanted in him, I had a very direct experience of malevolence.
Whoa, those are two bombshells. Okay, so and obviously you can't deny either one of those. So being that you have experienced, I guess, what we call the phenomena, UFOs, paranormal, and having that validated for you. So there is a part of this of humanity that has not come to this realization, and potentially it's on their doorstep, where they're going to have this moment where their worlds get shattered, their religious views come into question, all these things they're going to have to face. And it's going to be a tough time. I feel like, I don't know for sure, this we'll have to see, but it just feels like it's going to be a period of time where people who weren't prepared to have this information, have this confirmation, and go through the process may not be ready and mentally ready. And I think that's where a psychologist comes into play. What do you think? How do you think your work can intersect, especially being that you had your own experience? How do you think your work can benefit helping people through this process?
Right. Well, two ways. One is that I have a framework for helping people rise from Homo sapiens into Homo spiritus. And so that framework is part of it. The other part is that one of the hats that I still wear, even though I no longer provide psychotherapy myself, I still train and mentor psychotherapists. And so there's this ripple effect where the psychotherapists that I've trained and that I mentor, the things they gain from me, they are able to pass along to their psychotherapy clients and get positive results with their clients. So it's both of those things. The training that I do, the keynotes that I give, the framework that I have, which is called the Spark Blueprint. The Spark is an acronym that ends with the letter C, not the letter K. And the 3 books that I'm about to release, that are my next 3 books, called the Spark Trilogy.
Okay, well, if you wouldn't mind talking, well, let me ask you this before we'll get it. Definitely, I want to get into the books right after this, but I just wanted to ask you, okay, with that plan in place, that sounds like a great plan. What is the downside to not having a plan in place for when this moment comes? What if we don't have groups ready to kind of, mentor or I guess analyze or help people through this crisis? What if we don't have that framework in place? What could be the downside to not having a structure ready for people who are going to face ontological shock?
We already know the answer to that. We know the answer to that by through people who served in the military, came back from war with post-traumatic stress disorder, and the psychological mechanisms for helping people recover from PTSD back in the day were not very well developed. So they were coming back with a really deep need and a very difficult time getting that need met. We've had the same experience with people who are genocide survivors, for example, people who are survivors of natural disasters, where there was nothing in place for them to get help, and so they were in over their heads, as it were, and in over their hearts and in over their spirits with the trauma they were experiencing, because there was nothing in place that gave them support and hope and a path forward even before they needed it. So we already know what happens when people sustain outside the box life experiences that they're not equipped psychologically or spiritually to handle in a good way. We know what happens, and it's not good. So it's important that we have these things in place. And that's part of why I've launched the Spark Blueprint, so that people can have access to a framework for elevating themselves into Homo Spiritus before these traumas hit, so that they have the right stuff inside themselves to utilize these outside the box experiences in positive ways without going down the tubes.
Wow, that's deep. And I've never heard it. Makes total sense when you put it like that, those being not prepared to go through PTSD essentially. And that makes total sense that be the similar experience that they would have. Now, being that this would be a moment where we would hope we could get through this, and with help like, individuals like yourself who are out here doing this sort of work, we hope we come out on the other side healed and okay and able to kind of redirect our path. We know we have governments, powers that be, that are in position to do exactly what happened, as you stated, back in the 60s, where they're ready to squash a come together moment for humanity. So how are we going to combat that? And what do you think the playbook should be for that?
Well, I think the playbook was written very well by Buckminster Fuller, a 20th century futurist. And Bucky Fuller said, if you don't like what's going on, and I'm paraphrasing here, but I'm paraphrasing honorably on Bucky's behalf. If you don't like what's going on, don't waste your energy protesting against what you don't like. Introduce something instead that's far superior to what you don't like, and those who are ready will come along with you. So that's what I've been doing. Instead of railing against the machine, railing against the corrupt, railing against all of the garbage that's going on, I focus on offering something far superior to the problem, so that people who are ready will come along for the ride with that, so that they, in utilizing those kinds of resources, inoculate themselves from being propagandized, manipulated, and stressed out by the powers that be. You may not know this, but 75% of people today identify themselves as chronically stressed. That's been published by the American Psychological Association, that does an annual Stress in America survey through the Harris polls. And not only that, but 77% of stressed people identify stress about our nation's future as one of their big stressors. So 3/4 of people are chronically stressed, and 77% of them are stressed about the nation's future. Well, we got to do something about this.
Looking into the mind, we're going to lean on your work as a psychologist. What's the psychology of those within the government, right? The powers that be, because as I always say, these are made up of human beings that go home and have family lives and children and love their children, love their neighbor. Supposedly, what is do you see a moment where someone may break from the fold and do work on behalf of humanity from within the government? Because it seems like they work as a machine, but I always say they're made up of individual human beings, so compassion has to come into play at some point. Like, do you think you'll see defectors from that'll end up trying to come and help what we're doing on the humanity side of things?
Yeah. Yeah. I hold love in my heart for those who want to occupy leadership roles in society and in government and things along those lines. And we all know something that's been true throughout history, which is that there have been rotten eggs. There have been evil people who have accumulated political and societal power. We know that. But the majority of people that I've come in contact with in government are basically well-intended human beings who have gotten hijacked by numerous different sources. In government, it's very easy to get hijacked by lobbyists because of the corrupt fundamental nature of the election system, which requires massive amounts of funds donated by various groups to support someone's candidacy. And so there's all kinds of selling one's soul for that. That happens not only among malevolent people, people who are evil, but happens with people who are well-intended, but they really want to get reelected to do more good, but they have to cave in to corrupt lobbyist money in order to have enough money to run their campaign. So we've got that problem. And then we have another huge problem, which is government's former addiction, which has deteriorated. And I'll explain both of those parts of this. Government's addiction historically to compromise that has given way to coercion. And the reason for that is because chronic compromise inevitably leads to coercion. Here's why. The best attainable outcome with a compromise problem-solving strategy is all parties walk away from the negotiating table feeling equally ripped off rather than unequally ripped off. And over time, giving up a little bit this time and a little bit next time and a little bit the time after that and a little bit the time after that, it accumulates over time to the point where people start to say, that's it. I've given all I'm going to give. I'm not compromising anymore. It's my way or the highway. So our government has deteriorated from a faulty compromise approach to an even more dysfunctional coercion approach. Fortunately, there's a third alternative to compromise and coercion, but the problem, to double back to your question, is that virtually no one in government is trained in the third approach, the alternative to compromise and coercion, and a lot of them don't even know that there's a third alternative, let alone how to do it.
Wow. How do they
And that
become
third
aware?
alternative is collaboration. It's win-win.
Yeah.
They don't know how to do it. And
Yeah.
I learned that one the hard way. Is there time for another quick story on that?
We have 30 seconds. Let's get that right on the other side of the break. That'd be
Sure.
awesome.
Yeah.
Did I say it's going deep, guys? Dr. Gruder is the guy to talk to about humanity. I mean, I definitely would support his work, guys. And I know we've put the email address, the website address out in the chat. So make sure you guys go ahead and support Dr. Gruder's effort. He comes with the pure heart to this show tonight. You can feel it, and he cares about other human beings, which is the same for me and the reason why we're doing this. So we'll be right back after this break. Spaced Out Radio, the last break of the night with our guest. Make sure you get your questions in, and we'll ask them on the other half of this. See you in a minute. All right, we are clear and we're still on. Everyone can see and hear us. Um, yeah, I get you. Yeah, yeah. This is why I love to have these sort of conversations, because these are the important ones. These are definitely the important conversations, the ones that we have to have. These are the ones that move the needle. And I know you're going to walk away from this show with more than you came in with. And that was the purpose of bringing Dr. Gruder in. These are the type of guests that I look for. And, steel sharp as steel. And I'm walking away with a lot of new ideas, and it's so awesome that a lot of things that I already feel align with your work. So it fits like a glove. More I need to learn on this, and I'll be definitely studying up under you. And I would love, Dr. Gruder, if you would, because I have a separate channel, smaller channel, and I love to have a conversation with you over there sometime, if you wouldn't mind.
Mm-hmm. Sure, be happy to.
I'll be reaching out to you for that. drgruder.com. Tomal Man has put it in the chat. And I know you have another website too, which is, what's the other site?
Right. It's actually just in the process of launching. It's for my Spark Blueprint and the Spark Trilogy and the Center for Enlightened Self-Sovereignty, and the URL is becominghomospiritus.com. becominghomospiritus.com.
All right, you guys got that? Write it down. Write it down.
Yeah, because it's not on my main website yet. If you go to drgruder.com, you won't see it there yet. This is a sneak preview.
Nice. Exclusive. Also, you have that Reimagining Humanity's Future and Yours website I saw as well. And you have a book website as well. What's the book website?
Well, I have a booking website. I have a page for people to book me to give keynote addresses.
Okay, I think it's the Dr. Gruder. No, because I saw some of your books on here. I think
that's on drgruder.com.
Okay. And I definitely want to have you speak to some of these books. And I just keep saying this, but I screen my guests before I bring them in, because I want to make sure that it's going to be a great conversation and that the message is there. And there wasn't.
I do the same with my show too.
There wasn't anything that you said that lined up with aliens necessarily, so I wasn't bringing you on to be an alien guest per se, but just your perspective on humanity. I thought, I haven't heard it anywhere, and it's the same message that I'm pushing out there. And I feel like even in this community that we're in, and we're talking about UFOs here, that consciousness should be at the head of that, which also ties directly into humanity and just loving each other. The only way you're going to raise your consciousness is if we find a way to come together, and that has to be through love and acceptance of others' views and things of that nature. So yeah,
I agree.
Yeah.
Did you want me to tell that other quick story about collaboration and compromise and coercion, or no?
Yes. If we, as soon as we come back, I would love for you to do that.
Oh, sure.
And we got about 2 minutes left.
Got it.
And I think I got your MEWC. Let me check. I'm pretty sure I got your message you put out there. Flat Sixer. See you put one out there as well. Let me go back, make sure I didn't miss anyone here. And yeah, Tomal, man, you're fired up out there, man. I love it. It's, it's politics at the end of the day. Let's see. Hey, Aussie Ange, thanks for coming on in from the land down under. There she goes. That's right, Aussie Ange. All questions in capitals so Rob can see it. Thank you. Appreciate that, Aussie Ange. And there was this site here Tomalman found, Doctor. It's dannypierre.com/David Gruder. Are you familiar with
That's
that?
for speaking engagements.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Got it. Okay. All right. And we have 30 seconds here. And guys, make sure you share this show. Let's get this show out there. I want a lot of people to be exposed to this. So as many people as you can share to. I think it matters to everybody. It should matter to everyone. So we got about 5 seconds here. All right, here we go. All right, everybody, welcome back. Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours radio show. We're on the back half of the second hour. Only 23 minutes left with our guest here. Dr. David Gruder has been gracious enough to share his time here tonight and knowledge and talking about humanity and maybe reshaping your perspective on how you feel about your fellow human. We're going to go ahead and talk about more of this here tonight. And if you missed any of this awesome conversation, jump in the archives. Once again, it's free. YouTube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Doctor, you were going into a story before the break, and you had another one that you want to continue with, if you would mind picking that up.
Sure. This was how I learned that people in government don't know about that third approach to problem solving that's other than compromise and coercion. I was brought over to Geneva, Switzerland a number of years ago now to provide a training program for a group of ambassadors to the World Trade Organization. And I came out a week ahead of giving the training program in order to meet with each of the ambassadors individually who were going to be attending the training so I could custom craft the training to what they needed. And what I learned from them was that they were very well versed in compromise and they were very well versed in coercion, but many of them didn't even know that there was an alternative to those two problem solving methods, let alone what it was or how to do it. And so I ended up doing the training program on collaborative problem solving, collaborative negotiation. And they were all saying, how come we haven't learned this? How come it's not used in the World Trade Organization? How come it's not used in the governments of our own countries that we're representing in the World Trade Organization? It really, that firsthand experience drove home to me how people who are in public service, who are well-intended human beings by and large, with the exceptions aside, they almost unanimously have no idea how to do collaboration. They may have heard of collaboration as a problem solving or negotiation method, but they've never been trained in the mechanics of it. And I train people in the mechanics of collaboration. It's one thing to say, oh yeah, collaboration is a good thing, and it's good that you believe in it, but believing in collaboration and knowing how to do it are two completely different things. And knowing how to facilitate collaboration is an even higher level of sophistication that most people don't have.
And that's that give and take there, right? And just, coming to an agreement, coming to terms as far as collaboration goes. You would think it'd be an easy thing, and you think it'd be something that would be the first thing you think about when it comes to making everybody happy. But going to those international groups, because everybody thinks of like a United Nations as a world government, essentially has the ability to maybe make decisions for the globe, for humanity as a whole. Is that really a thing? Like, do they really have the reach, and would they be an organization that you would go to in the end to try to facilitate some sort of unification of humanity? Like, would they be a group, seeing that you've seen it from the inside?
I would never say no to any influential group that wanted to bring me in to assist them in elevating themselves. That said, I have a very limited optimism that these kinds of organizations are going to rise to the occasion in the ways that are needed. Even if I was brought in, they would probably either reject what I offered to them, or they would politely say thank you and then reject it. Now, that doesn't mean that that would be true of everyone. I'm sure that in all of these organizations, there are really well-intended people. By and large, I think those well-intended people in these fundamentally disrupted organizations have to fly under the radar and not make too many waves, or they're going to get kicked out.
And so how do you displace an organization like that and replace it with one that would work the way that we want it to work, and kind of, allow this sort of thought process to come in? Because it seems like it'd be the right way to go if we're talking about, if you're loving everybody, if you're loving your fellow human, this should be the way to go. And even on the smaller levels, just different governments should also feel the same way. But if we were to go to the top, and how do you displace a group like that to replace it with one that works the way that we want it to work?
Yeah. I'm not sure that it has to do with displacing them. They'll become obsolete on their own. My analogy, to answer your question, is from the process of having built the transcontinental railway in the 1800s in the United States. There was a work crew that started on the West Coast and worked its way toward the middle of the country. Another work crew that started on the East Coast worked their way toward the middle of the country from there. If they didn't stay coordinated with each other, they would have gotten to the middle of the country and the tracks wouldn't have lined up. So that's an analogy for what I see, which is that you've got to have top-down change that's coordinated with bottom-up change. So the grassroots forms of change, community change, organization change, businesses that elevate into social responsibility, things along those lines, that bottom-up kind of change puts pressure on the top to do some changing too. And a small minority of people at the top are going to be doing top-down change in more positive ways. So I have a government trust restoration project that's for people in government who want to do top-down change and don't know how to do it in elevated ways that help Homo spiritus emerge out of Homo sapiens. And I have the Spark Blueprint that's for bottom-up change, for people who realize that we have to become the change we want to see in the world in order to facilitate that change in the world.
That is awesome, man. You have a great way of explaining things, Doctor. You definitely are really effective at speaking here. So I appreciate that. And let me go ahead and get a couple of these questions here. Amy WC asks, what do you think about the book Future Shock, Toffler's book in the 70s, where we can't handle the future well as it's coming too fast?
Yeah. Well, actually, Future Shock was one of the textbooks in my History of the Future course that I took as an undergraduate. And so I have a lot of affection for Toffler and his work on futurism. As all of us know, things keep going faster and faster. They're not slowing down. The amount of information that we're inundated with, the notion that computers and the internet could simplify our lives, great in theory. It's actually made things more complicated and people have harder time managing everything. People are generally, in my experience, on information overload. And they're on information overload because they're getting inundated with the garbage that's being fed to them by AI, artificial intelligence algorithms on social media and on in search engines that are designed to show us more of what it seems like we're interested in, or it seems like we believe. And what that reinforces is a state of rightness addiction. That I'm right about how wrong everyone who doesn't agree with me or my group or my party or my religion or my philosophy, etc. And so Toffler was right. Things are speeding up, and we need ways to slow things down in ourselves, not waiting for things to slow down out there, but by being much more deliberate in what we focus our attention on, so that we're focusing our attention on viable solutions to the problems rather than focusing our attention on the crisis of the day and the dysfunction of the day and the protests against what we don't want. That focus of attention does not serve us. It overwhelms us. We've got to focus on solutions that inoculate us against that craziness. And that's why I wrote the Spark Trilogy, to give people access to that.
Yeah, and I agree. I was just telling someone on the show the other day, it's like social media is like a remote control that controls the emotions of all of us at one time. With one click of a button, it literally can make us sad, it can make us happy, and it's just crazy. The people who have control of that are the wrong people to be in control of it. And yeah, so that's awesome. Let me see here. We have Flat Sixer, who's let's see, asking, after a lifetime spent helping humans function better, what has given you the most hope about where we're heading?
Well, ironically, what gives me the most hope about where we're heading is that things keep getting worse. Now, that may sound a little bizarre, but if you think about it in terms of, for example, in the field of addiction, people have to hit bottom before they become willing to get into recovery, if they ever become willing to get into recovery. I thought when 9/11 happened, September 11th, 2001, when 9/11 happened, I thought, okay, that's an intense enough wake-up call for the United States to finally wake up. I was wrong. It wasn't intense enough. So then I thought in 2008, when the economic crash happened, okay, that's going to wake us up. Wrong again. I thought when Trump was elected in 2016, and this has nothing to do with whether you support or don't support him, it had to do with disruption, because he's a disruptor, that would be the wake-up call. Wrong again. I thought COVID and the lockdown would be the wake-up call. Wrong again. So what I realize is that the law of wake-up calls is in operation at a societal level just as much as at an individual level. And what that means is mostly people see the light, mostly people change, not because they see the light, but because they feel the heat. We collectively need things to keep getting worse until collectively we hit bottom as a society. So every time a deeper bottom is hit, I hope it's a deep enough bottom. And on the other hand, it may not be a deep enough bottom. So my reaction is, okay, keep bringing it on until society hits bottom. So it's actually the worsening crises that give me hope, because here's what I know without a doubt. The sinister forces that are in operation right now, they wouldn't be resorting to the incredibly amplified levels of divisiveness and hatred and dysfunctionality that they are imposing on society, in terms of the political parties being at war with each other and conflicting versions of who the deep state is and isn't, and things like that. That wouldn't be happening unless they were terrified that their reign of terror is coming to an end. So they're bringing out all of the big guns now to try to a last-ditch effort to prevent humanity from elevating and consciousness from elevating. So the more they do that, the more I know we're on track. Does that make sense as a paradox?
That makes total sense. And once again, another validating moment, because I've said this to this audience maybe a week ago. The same thing, that what we're experiencing, what we're going through is actually a good thing, because it's taking us to our lowest low, and we'll never want to go back to a point like this. So we'll just automatically want to do better collectively, because the world is experiencing and having this low energy in this moment. It's not just us here in Americas, it's the world at the same time. And I also brought up COVID. It's just really, moments when you're able to have the world's attention at once is when you could have these things be effective and affect change. And You're absolutely right. Just another validating moment. So
Well, you're
appreciate that.
clearly a brother from another mother, aren't you?
It is seeming that way. It is really seeming that way. And let's see here. We got Flat Sixer again dropping awesome comments. He's question is, if NHI, non-human intelligence, were publicly disclosed, what framework would you want mental health professionals to use to help people process the shock in a healthy way?
I would want more mental health professionals trained in the leading edge approaches for trauma healing that not enough mental health professionals are trained in. EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, energy psychology methods like tapping, emotional freedom techniques, and etc. I would want people to recognize that there could be value in competently facilitated plant medicine, because plant medicine, when it's properly facilitated, can help people's consciousness expand in a very rapid kind of way, which is dangerous if the facilitator is not good. But if the facilitator is a good facilitator, that expansion of consciousness can help people grow into a disruptive experience like NHI being publicly disclosed.
Awesome stuff there. And let's see, I don't think we had another question come through. Those are three awesome questions, so we do appreciate that. If you have anything else pop in, I'll bring that up for the doctor here. But Dr. Gruder, let's go ahead and allow you this time to talk about your books and, you know, what they're about and where people can get them. And we have about 7 minutes left. So I'd like to spend some time with you talking about that.
Sure. So I've been involved in many books over the course of my career. My next 3 books, which are now in soft launch, and I'll explain that in a moment, are collectively called the Spark Trilogy. The first book is called Rising Luminous, and it is a modern fable for fractured times. It's the first book that I've written that's fiction. All of the books I've been involved with over the course of my career up until this book have been nonfiction. So it's a parable that makes it easier for people to get a feel for the nature of elevating from Homo sapiens to Homo spiritus. And that's followed by the second book, which is called The Spark Scroll. And the Spark Scroll unpacks all of the content of this mystical document that's featured heavily in the Rising Luminous book, the first book in the Spark Trilogy. It unpacks all of the content of that mystical scroll and starts to make it practical and usable. And then the third book in the trilogy is called Homo Spiritus Awakens. And that book is the boots on the ground, step by step. Here's how to turn this wisdom and this elevated consciousness into a step-by-step process for guiding one's own journey from Homo sapiens to Homo spiritus. So those 3 books are now semi-privately available. They're on soft launch, as I said. They're only available right now through becoming a free member of the Center for Enlightened Self-Sovereignty. And the way to do that and to get access to those 3 books, the first 2 of which, by the way, I have made free. The only book that I charge a nominal amount for at this time, as we're recording this show, is the third book, Becoming Homo Spiritus. But the first 2 books are free if you become a free member of the Center for Enlightened Self-Sovereignty. The access to that is the URL becominghomospiritus.com. You go to that website and you can enter into the Center for Enlightened Self-Sovereignty, where you can get access to those 3 books in the Spark Blueprint, in the Spark Trilogy, rather.
And you've won some awards for some of these books, right? Which books did you win awards for?
I won 2 awards for the very first book that I published in 1996. It won Mental Health Book of the Year Award and a Health and Wellness Book Award. And I didn't apply for those awards. They just suddenly appeared. So somebody found out about that book and saw that the book got awards. My integrity book, which was another of my subsequent books, which I have multiple of them, that was published in 2008, called The New IQ, How Integrity Intelligence Serves You, Your Relationships, and Our World. I wrote it as an interdisciplinary book, and I'm really delighted that it got interdisciplinary recognition, because the awards it received were in the categories of social change, current events in politics and society, conscious business and leadership, health and wellness, transformational psychology, and self-help. My publisher of that book said to me, after it had received awards in that diverse range of categories, he had never heard of a book that received awards in as many different categories as that book received. That's the book that validated for me that I really am interdisciplinary. It was the world that showed me that. It's one thing if I think that I'm interdisciplinary, but the book awards demonstrate it. And that book also resulted in radio, TV interview reports naming me America's integrity expert.
And I've heard you also talk about, because we brought up politics here tonight, I've heard you give the explanation of this isn't left or right. Right. And I'd love for you to go ahead and kind of make that statement, because I think it's very important to put the cherry on top of this tonight.
You bet. The people who are fueling left-right divisiveness are part of the problem. They are not part of the solution. Is it true that there are wingnuts at the extremes of all political parties? Of course it's true. It's always been true. But that's not true of the mainstream, what we used to call in the 1960s the silent majority. The silent majority of Americans, and I believe in other countries that I've worked in, at least, they range from the moderate right to the moderate left, and they have more in common with each other than with the extremists in their own camps. And the time has come for us to buy out of the my party is all good and is doing all the right things, and anyone who's not my party is evil. That kind of mindset that exists at the extremes of both parties, that's part of the disease. It's not part of the solution. The solution is to understand that underneath the divisiveness and polarization, you've basically got one group that's saying personal freedom is the most important thing, and another group that's saying the common good is the most important thing. And both of those groups are equally and oppositely insane, because the highest vision, there was a lot of shadow in the forming of the United States, but the highest vision in forming the United States was to create a country that operated at the intersection of what the Constitution calls personal freedom and the common good, which means self-sovereignty and societal well-being. We've got to stop arguing over which of those two things is better and start reuniting around harmonizing self-sovereignty and societal well-being. That's the way off the crazy, politicized, extremist, vilification, divisiveness merry-go-round.
That is awesome. Now, I appreciate that. I think that definitely encapsulated everything, because people get into, he's this side or that side, and I don't care about that. I tell you, leave all that at the door. When you come in here, you come in as a human being. I don't care what walk of life you're from, what political, I have no care for that at all. We're coming here to have conversations as human beings, and I think you wrap that up very nicely. Dr. Gruder, thank you so much for coming in and having this conversation. I'm looking forward to talking to you again. It's always a more awesome conversation the second time. Appreciate you, sir. Have a great rest of your night.
Thank you again for inviting me. It's been a pleasure.
Conversations
right,
that
talk
move
soon.
the needle.
Conversations that move the needle.
You're listening to After Hours with Mr. Rob G on the only place where you can own the night. Spaced Out Radio.
Spaced Out Radio. You've tuned your dial to the right frequency.
All right, we are clear. Another deep conversation. Thank you guys for coming in for that. We'll be back right after this break. right, everybody. Welcome back. Spaced Out Radio. After hour number 3, we're going to get ready to jump into some Steve Stockton Tells and Told Miss Person Mysteries as soon as we come back from this radio break here in about 10 seconds. Let's get ready. All right, everybody. Welcome back. Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours radio show. We're in after hour number 3. We just had an awesome conversation. I think a mind-changing conversation with Dr. David Gruder here tonight, talking humanity. Very important. Not a topic a lot of people like to get into for whatever reason. Look at your inner self, self-reflection. Recognize who you are. We're all the same. We're all human beings. And we have to have these conversations. And we did. So if you want to get into it, hop in the archive because it doesn't cost you a dime. Absolutely free. You can find that over youtube.com/@spacedoutradio. As we get ready to go ahead and jump into Steve Stockton Tells Untold Missing Person Mysteries right here at Spaced Out Radio, let's get into it right about now.
Welcome to Tales Untold and Missing Persons Mysteries on Spaced Out Radio's After Hours. My name is Steve Stockton, and I'm here to take you on a journey of mysteries, legends, and true stories. Come, join me on this strange adventure of Tales Untold and Missing Person Mysteries.
The mysterious disappearance of Mara Murray. Now, a unique thing about the Mara Murray disappearance case is that it's known for being called the first crime mystery of the social media age. This is because Facebook was launched only 5 days before Mara went missing. Of course, there's much speculation about her case, as to be expected, and some have even called it the most highly speculated case of the 21st century. Mara's disappearance remains a mystery that is unsolved to this day. First, let's talk about Mara Murray and who she was. Mara was born in Brockton, Massachusetts on May 4th, 1982, to parents Fred and Laurie Murray, making her their youngest daughter. Her father, Fred, was a medical technician, and her mother, Laurie, was a nurse. Mara had grown up in Hanson, Massachusetts, which is a small suburb on the South Shore. Her family was a typical working-class family. She had a lot of guidance from her siblings. She had an older brother named Fred Jr., 2 sisters, Julie and Kathleen, and her youngest brother, Curtis. When Mara was 6, however, her parents divorced. Mara was described as being an overachiever who excelled both athletically and academically. She was also a member of the National Honor Society. Also, at the same time, she was very active in her local community, where she would become known for her kind heart, signature dimples, and beautiful smile. As if that wasn't enough, she also participated in nearly every sport available to her, including competitive AAU basketball, which also allowed her to travel all over New England. As a fierce competitor, Mara had consistently finished in the top tier of runners in the state of Massachusetts and even broke several long-standing school records at the time. She graduated at the top of her class at Whitman-Hanson Regional High School with her pick of colleges to choose from, both athletically and academically. But she ended up deciding to accept a congressional nomination from the late Senator Edward Kennedy and would be joining her sister Julie at the prestigious United States Military Academy located at West Point. Mara had continued to excel at the rigorous military and academic program there and even established herself to be a force on the cross-country and track teams. However, during the second year she was at West Point, she decided that the military life was not for her and then transferred to the University of Massachusetts in Amherst. That's when she also decided to pursue a career in nursing. During Mara's freshman year at West Point, she received an honor code violation for stealing some makeup from a Fort Knox commissary. This incident didn't formally expel her. However, that is when she transferred into the nursing program at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. There was another incident in November of 2003, just 3 months prior to her disappearance, when she was caught ordering food with a stolen credit card. Mara's arrest record showed that the charge would have been dismissed after 3 months of good behavior. In the days leading up to Mara's disappearance, on February 5, 2004, she was working her evening shift doing campus security. After a phone call with her older sister Kathleen, she was said to have burst into tears and even had to have a supervisor escort her back to her dorm room. When she was asked what was bothering her, Mara simply responded, "My sister." Kathleen claims that the conversation was about her drinking and abusing of alcohol. See, Kathleen herself had just been discharged from a rehab program and she then admitted to Mara that her fiancé had taken her to the liquor store. On Saturday, February 7th, Mara's dad, Fred, had arrived in town to help take her car shopping. According to Julie, her sister Mara's car was in very rough shape, and she wanted something that was going to be more reliable. That night, Mara had borrowed Fred's car and attended a party that was going on at the campus. At 3:30 a.m., when she was driving back to Fred's motel room, she had hit a guardrail and caused about $10,000 worth of damage to the car. The cops had arrived at the scene and drove her back to the motel. Now, there's no documentation of a sobriety test in the accident report. It was a car that Fred had rented and returned it to his home located in Connecticut on February 8th. He then spoke to Mara on the phone at around 11:30 p.m. to remind her that she needed to get accident forms from the Registry of Motor Vehicles. And this is what we know about the events of February 9, 2004. It would be the last time the 21-year-old Mara would be seen. Just after midnight, Mara had searched MapQuest for directions to the Berkshires and Burlington, Vermont. At 1 p.m., Mara had emailed her boyfriend to let him know that she didn't like talking to anyone lately. She did promise to call him later, though. Then around 1:13 p.m., Mara had made a phone call to check about a condo rental unit located in Bartlett, New Hampshire. She knew the area with the condos because her family had vacationed there in the past. The phone call lasted about 3 minutes, and at the end, no rental plans were made for the condo. Mara had then called a fellow nursing student. At 1:24 p.m., Mara had sent word to a nursing school supervisor to let them know that she would be out of town for approximately a week because there was a death in the family. However, her family insists that there was no such death. At 2:05 p.m., Mara called a number that provides pre-recorded information on booking hotels in Stowe, Vermont. The phone call then lasted about 5 minutes. At 2:18 p.m., Mara then left her boyfriend a voicemail. The call lasted about 1 minute, and she said they would talk later. Mara had packed her car with clothing, birth control pills, textbooks, and toiletries. With a later searching of her dorm room, they found that most of Mara's belongings were packed in boxes, that her art had been removed from the walls, and the police found a printed email in the room between Mara and her boyfriend at the time, which indicated they were having relationship problems. At 3:30 p.m., Mara drove away in her 1996 Saturn sedan. Classes that day had been canceled because of an impending snowstorm. At 3:40 p.m., Mara then withdrew $280 from an ATM and picked up $40 worth of alcohol from a nearby liquor store. Security footage at both the ATM and liquor store determined that she was alone. Around 4 to 5 p.m., Mara had left Amherst. Her last recorded phone call was then at 4:37 p.m. to check her voicemail. At 7:27 p.m., Faith Westman of Woodsville, New Hampshire, had called 911 to report an accident that was outside of her home. She had heard a loud thump, then saw a car along the snowbank on Route 112. The car was pointing westward in the eastbound lane. Faith's neighbors, Virginia and John Marat, also noticed Mara's car outside of their kitchen window. The car's hazard lights were on, and they noticed someone walking around the car as well. As the Marats were watching, another neighbor, Bud Atwood, had pulled up to Mara in the school bus that he drove for his work. Atwood then got out of his bus and asked if Mara needed him to call the police for her. Mara said no, claiming that she had already called AAA, so there was no need. Atwood knew that the area did not have any cell phone service, so he didn't believe her story. He then offered to let her wait at his home until the assistance could arrive, but Mara insisted she was fine just staying in her car. Atwood then headed back home to call 911. He said initially he had trouble getting through to the dispatch because of the busy phone circuits. However, his phone call eventually went through at 7:43 p.m. At 7:46 p.m., the Haverhill Police Sergeant Cecil Smith had arrived at the scene, following up on Westman's 911 call. However, the car was locked, but there was no sign of Mara. The car's airbags had been deployed, and there was a crack in the driver's side windshield. Sergeant Smith spotted a box of Franzia wine behind the driver's seat and also an empty beer bottle. There was red liquid on the driver's side door, the car's ceiling, and on the road, too. A later search found a Coke bottle that was filled with a red drink that smelled like alcohol. The Kahlua, Bailey's, and vodka that Mara had bought earlier at the liquor store were not found in the car. Her cell phone, wallet, and credit cards have never been located. Sergeant Smith went to the Westmans in order to ask about the incident. Then he stopped at the Atwoods to ask where the girl had gone to. After explaining to the officer that he hadn't seen anyone since he left the vehicle, both Atwood and Sergeant Smith drove around the area in hopes of finding Mara. 10 minutes after Sergeant Smith's arrival, both the fire truck and EMS had pulled up to the scene. At 8:49 p.m., the scene was cleared and Mara's vehicle was towed away. An APB was then issued for Mara after 12 p.m. on February 10th, and she was first to be considered missing at 5:17 p.m. Then, the next day, the authorities had police dogs track her scent. They got a hit on her about 100 yards east of where her vehicle had been abandoned before the dogs lost the trail. The FBI was called in at 10 days after her disappearance, and then it became a nationwide search. At the 10-day mark, the New Hampshire Fish and Game were brought in to conduct their own ground and air searches using a helicopter that was equipped with a thermal imaging camera. However, Mara's family disputes these claims. Police repeatedly voiced concerns that she could be a danger to herself. Many people have criticized the police for their lack of urgency during the initial days. It was almost a full day by the time Mara had been announced as missing, and even then, an official search wasn't immediately commenced. Here's some of the popular theories behind Martha's disappearance, and again, these are just conjecture. Her intentions that day was to disappear. She'd been planning to meet up with someone, and whoever the person was must have picked her up after the car crash. Another theory, she'd been abducted. A third theory, she must have walked away from her car, possibly to flee the scene of the crash because she was afraid of getting in trouble and then succumbed to the elements. And another, Mara had left that day to take her own life alone in the mountains. More on the first theory, that Mara had intentions that day to disappear. It's worth noting the claims of James Renner, who's an investigative journalist. He largely believes that Mara is in fact still alive and that she'd planned her own escape because she was pregnant. Mara did make a search online for the effects of alcohol on a fetus. However, there were some of her nursing school friends who later on said this was research for an assignment. Journalist Renner had also reported that one of Mara's friends sent him an email that accused Mara's boyfriend, Bill, of being abusive to her. However, recently Bill Rosh was indicted by grand jury on felony abuse charges. There were also rumors that Mara had been in a relationship with a man by the name of Hossein Baghdadi, who was an assistant track coach at the University of Massachusetts. Baghdadi has been open about the situation and has even told detectives that Mara had hinted to him that she was thinking she may disappear. The UMass Outing Club actually owns a cabin that is in the White Mountains, and that's where some think she was heading to. There's no communication suggesting that Mara and Baghdadi had been communicating in the weeks leading up to her disappearance. On James Renner's blog, he bluntly accused Fred of having knowledge of what exactly happened to Mara, citing his unwillingness to be interviewed by Renner as suspicious. In a Boston Magazine article, Renner even states, quote, "There's nothing that would please me more than to depose Fred in court under oath," end quote. Now, in defense of Fred, some have said it has been over 16 years of nonstop searching for his missing daughter, and that could indeed wear anyone down over the years, and there are very few avenues that he hasn't investigated personally. However, Fred says he has no doubt that Mara was abducted that day. It was then, in late 2004, when a man by the name of Larry Moulton had come forward with a knife that he thought could have been the murder weapon. The knife belonged to his brother Claude, who lived only 3/4 of a mile away from the crash site in an A-frame house. In 2006, Clyde no longer lived at the house, and the new owners let private investigators inspect it. It was then that the cadaver dogs made a hit, so they took carpet samples for testing. However, the chain of custody was unclear, and the samples were conveniently lost. Moulton's knife was then turned over to the New Hampshire State Police, and the results were never released. The Missing Mara Murray podcast had returned to the A-frame house in 2016. What they found when going back looked to be bloodstains in a closet. They ended up sending the wood chips to molecular geneticist, was then able to confirm the presence of human blood. Unfortunately, the samples were too deteriorated in order to determine with 100% certainty whether or not the blood was Mara's. There was another house, however, that was near the Scent Dogs Trail that was searched back in 2019 after the ground-penetrating radar had showed a disturbance in that home's basement. The investigators had removed the concrete and searched several feet down, but sadly, no evidence was present. Now, the theory of an opportunistic killer might be statistically less probable, but it can't be just ruled out. 1 month after Mara had gone missing, a 17-year-old girl named Brianna Maitland had disappeared in Vermont. Some people feel like it could have been possible that both women fell prey to a serial killer. authorities looked into the connection that was between Maitland and a serial killer at the time named Israel Keys. However, this would later be ruled out by the FBI. In the online sleuth community, many believe that Keys is indeed to blame. That theory has a big problem with it, though: how small the window of opportunity was for a murderer to then take Mara, avoiding being seen. Butch Atwood only had a swift interaction with Mara, talking to her for only a few minutes, so she couldn't have been alone for more than 10 to 15 minutes when Sergeant Smith arrived. It was in a desolate, heavily wooded area, after all. There were at least 3 neighbors that could see her from their homes. There's another name that's frequently brought up when talking about Mara Murray, that of Rick Forcier. Rick Forcier had been driving home from his job as a contractor on the night of February 9th. That is when he spotted a woman walking in the woods that matched the description of Mara. There are some people who find his story a little suspicious because it was months later when he finally reported the sighting. Forcier had told police officers that he hadn't realized it was the same night until he went back through his work calendar, and that was in late April. The Murray family are adamant in the fact that Mara was not a threat to herself. That is something we know already. However, we need to take the theory that she wandered into the woods and passed away from the elements into consideration. Could it have been Occam's razor, which is widely referred to by those who consider the simplest explanation to be the most accurate? When we set all these assumptions about the case aside, the absolute facts are: a young woman had crashed her car and was last seen outside in the freezing cold weather. Whichever theory resonates with you, one astounding thing is the fact so many persons of interest were named, especially for a case that doesn't have any true suspects that have been named by the authorities. Recently, there was a new search on Wednesday, July 13, 2022, for Mara Murray. Police personnel in 2 different New Hampshire towns searched the areas of Landaff and Easton. The ground search was in an area that was off of Route 112 and is, quote, not the result of new information in the case, end quote. That's according to New Hampshire Attorney General John M. Formella in a press release about the search. He continues, it is part of an ongoing investigative process and will consist of a more extensive search of surrounding areas previously searched in a more limited fashion. Because the investigation is still ongoing, Formella and the State Police Colonel Nathan Nays said that no more information could be released at this time, and he asked the public to respect the privacy of the communities and residents. People should also remember to stay off private property. My family is aware of the search efforts and are working closely with law enforcement at this time, said Julie Murray, Mara's sister. She continues, we ask the public not to interfere with the investigation. We will share information as appropriate. We're encouraged by the active efforts to find Mara and remain hopeful for a resolution. If there's anyone who has any information about Mara Murray's disappearance, no matter how small or insignificant it may seem, they're asked to please call the New Hampshire Cold Case Unit at number 603-223-3648, or you can email coldcaseunit@dos.nh.gov. More information on Mara and the ongoing efforts to help find her and bring her home may be found on the website maramurraymissing.org. Back in January 2022, the FBI then created a violent criminal apprehension profile in Mara Murray's case. Mara's sister has stated in published reports that it is another method for multiple agencies and other jurisdictions to share their information with one another. Now, back in September of 2021, there were bone fragments found at the base of Loon Mountain. However, according to officials, they were not connected to Murray. The officials announced that the fragments could date back as far as the 18th century. The bone fragments had been found in what they called, quote, existing soil, unquote, stated the New Hampshire State Police. Radiocarbon dating had placed a 95% certainty that the bones that were found are from a person that died sometime between the years of 1774 to 1942. Quite a gap there. On Mara Murray's 38th birthday, they launched a website that offers the public never-before-seen pictures of her. It's also a repository of news reports that date back to 2004 and is an opportunity for people who are interested in knowing more about the case and to get to know Mara in an up-close and personal way. There's another feature of the blog post that is regularly updated, so our family can put out information to help keep the community informed and keep Mara's name in the public. A contact tab allows visitors to the site to communicate with their family members, Plus, there's a contact tab that provides people email updates on any important case developments if and when they come out. There's even a tip submission area, which provides a place where people can provide any new information or leads. Now, this is an unsolved mystery that has more twists and turns than the route Mara had taken that fateful night. Hopefully one day, the record can be set straight about what exactly happened to young Mara Murray on that cold night. Well, friends, there you have it. I look forward to your comments, but please keep it friendly and respectful. Till we meet again, be good to yourselves and each other. As for me, I'll see you a little farther on down the trail. I'm Steve Stockton, and I'll talk to you next time. Tell your pets I said hi.
All right, Steve Stockton tells untold missing person mysteries. Yeah, the disappearance of Mara Murray is a real story, Amy WC, as she points out here in the chat. And that's the thing with these, missing person mysteries. It's not just sheer entertainment. We're actually talking about people who are actual human beings who are missing somewhere, right? So I always want to give condolences to the family and not just treat that like entertainment, because there's people at home who just want to know where their loved one is. And you just keep that in mind whenever you hear Steve Stockton tell these stories, coming from a place of actual events that have taken place here. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and get into some good stuff here. We don't have Drew Banky here tonight because Drew Banky is feeling under the weather. And weather is a big thing where he lives. As you know, he's up in Colorado. So we're talking snow and all that, all the nasty stuff that us Californians like to stay away from, right? We get rain. We barely get rain. We definitely don't get snow though, right? So shout out to Drew Banky out there dealing with what he's dealing with. As we're going to get into some real good stuff for the last half hour though. I want to talk about, and I had something on my channel that I released, which was a video covering the AI propaganda war, essentially, is here. And you'll be very interested in how it's affecting us now and really the levels that it's at, and then where this thing might be likely going to. It's actually pretty scary, and you'll see some things here that I think are going to make you really think about how fast this is progressing. As we've talked about AI before, and there's been predictions on, when it's going to get to a point to where it's fooling us. And I think it's at a point of manipulation with human assistance, obviously. But I cover some key points in that I think will be really interesting to dive into. So we'll do that definitely on the other side of the break. But I want to take a moment to thank Dr. David Gruder for coming in and really speaking on humanity, right? Yeah, it's not a popular topic. Yeah, doesn't have a bunch of oohs and ahs, right? But it's what we are. We're human beings. We are humanity. We need each other. Like, these are real issues and things that we have to confront, right? So even in perpetuity, this conversation is going to be something to lean on as humanity. And I have to be unapologetic for having these sort of conversations. They have to be had, and they have to be part of the narrative that, especially here in the ufology community, where we are dealing with something that is here that we're going to have imminent contact with at some point here. And then the question is, what are we going to do after that, right? As a lot of people pointed out with questions and comments tonight, there is going to be an ontological shock. There is going to be a space where we're going to need to lean on psychologists, hypnotherapists, all these people who specialize in these fields. We're going to need them. We're going to be leaning on them to get through the moment. As he just beautifully laid out, it'll be a form of PTSD, and we know how that is already with our veterans. So with that being said, we're going to go into our final break of the night on what I feel like was an awesome show right here on Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours radio show. We're going to get into some awesome stuff on the last half hour. Make sure you don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with you. See you on the other half of the break. All right, we are clear. We are clear. And final break here. So, yeah, we'll have Drew Banky hopefully back tomorrow. I'm not sure. But we're definitely going to get into something good here tonight. And I'd like to take a moment for anyone who may not have already hit the like button. I don't know where it's at. I never do during these shows. But if you wouldn't mind, if you haven't already, just take a moment. Just take 30 seconds. We got a 5-minute break. Take 30 seconds. And let's go ahead and hit that like button or dislike, however you feel about it. And then also please leave a comment, regardless on what it says, right? Exactly. Yeah, T-Bone, fake Avi. Yeah. It's just mind-blowing. It's just mind-blowing. And what prompted me to put together a video on it, it was just, I was blown away because I was someone that was fooled about it. And if you remember, we had a guest here a week or so ago when we did, I think it was the Age of Disclosure show? I don't know. It was a show, I think we brought in Augie Nas. And Augie, I think, may have been fooled by a video of another talking head, another personality. It's getting weird, it's getting wild. And I'm going to show you some examples of that on the other side of this break. Yeah, Amy WC. Rob G, I thought those were made up ghost stories at times. When falling asleep, half listening. Yeah, no. I don't know, because I know we have Swamp Dweller here and then also Steve Stockton. I know for sure on the Steve Stockton side, he's doing stories of actual missing people. Swamp Dweller, I don't know if that's what he's doing there. I'm not sure. I know I interviewed him once way back in the day, but I can't remember if he's pulling those from actual events or not. So I can't really say there. But I have to keep that in mind, right? When I listen to these stories, because they're interesting, obviously, but then you have to take a moment and say, hey, wait, this person's missing for real. This is really a missing person. I think Matt Goodka's out for the night because he has to get up early, going to the Factory of Sadness for the Browns game. Oh, hilarious. Wow. We had a good game, though. If you were, those who watched the Thanksgiving Day game with the Dallas Cowboys, with my Cowboys, we won finally on Thanksgiving. It's always a miserable Thanksgiving for me because we never win, even though we play. And I live with and am constantly around a bunch of 49er fans, which are obviously the rival to the Dallas Cowboys. So imagine a world where you're at Thanksgiving dinner. Everybody around you is wearing a San Francisco 49ers jersey. I mean, everyone. It was like one Raider. Bunch of 49er fans, one Raider. And then imagine a world where the Dallas Cowboys lose the game. You just imagine how that feels. So it was a pleasant surprise to actually come out on the winning end of that this Thanksgiving. That actually, I was very thankful for that in this holiday. Jules says, I wasn't subjected to any sports this year. Yeah, it's a tradition over in our household. We're watching the games. And Cowboys, if you didn't know, have a deal. I forget how long it's for, but we played every year since I've been a fan, every single Thanksgiving, which is kind of a blessing because when you win, it's beautiful. But, I've had a lot of Thanksgiving days where my mood was just not good because we've been losers. All right, we'll be back here, coming back in about 15 seconds, get into the last half of the show as we get ready to shut this thing down. About 23 minutes. Let's get ready to go. All right, everybody, welcome back. Space Out Radio, the After Hours Radio Show. We are on the back half of hour 3. That means we're on the way home. Once again, we had a fantastic show tonight. We want to thank Dr. David Gruder for coming in and really dropping knowledge bombs, right? Really, putting in perspective how you should really be feeling, loving each other. Can we do that? Integrity. Can we have that? That's what we need to move forward. And we're committed to doing that. So have an archive if you missed any of that. We're going to go ahead and get ready to jump into a topic that I just wanted to go over real quick, because I actually had done a show about this and thought that it would be pretty awesome to kind of talk more about it. So AI, right? AI is, I think, definitely useful. I think we've all used it on some level. I think it definitely has its place. I definitely also feel like there should be some sort of restrictions put on it. But that's not a reality, and that's because the mindset with these governments are, why cap hours or restrict hours if foreign governments are going to continue to develop? They have no morals or standards when it comes to, how dangerous AI could get. And in a lot of cases, they want it to become, to a point to where it can, essentially affect humanity in a negative way. And so it's like a arms race when it comes to AI. But the thing with that is, and what I feel like is it's going to be a joke on them and a joke on us all once AI is able to do things on its own without help of human beings. So there were some things that I've seen recently that really kind of shocked me to the core. Okay. It was so bad that I had to just really quickly throw a video together talking about it because I felt it was that important. And it was, I won't say anymore. I'll just go ahead and show the video that I'm talking about here. And we'll get into that and talk about it. Get your comments on this right after we take a look at this here. So let me get this up. Give me just a moment. Once again, you can find this over on my YouTube page, Social Dig. Let me go ahead and remove and add that back. Okay. Let's go ahead and run this. The AI propaganda war has begun. Just ask Avi Loeb. In case you haven't noticed, the AI propaganda war is here. How can you detect it, and what can you do about it? On today's Social Bits. As we all know, AI has become prevalent in today's time, and with that comes a lot of concerns. Well, for one, the fact of it being used as propaganda. There are various cases of this. We're going to go ahead and go over a few things here today. All right, let's start with this. What is propaganda? Why is it used? How should we handle it? And most importantly, what can you do about it? All right, number one, what is propaganda? Propaganda is the deliberate spread of information, often biased or misleading, to influence the opinions, the emotions, and actions of a group to benefit one particular sponsor. It's used to promote a political cause or point to a view that can be distributed through various means, including speeches, posters, films, and social media. Examples including advertising, public relations, government information campaigns, and historical instances from Nazi Germany and the horrors there to the Soviet Union. Here's some of the key characteristics. The primary goal is to sway public opinion, attitudes, emotions, or behavior. Biased or misleading information. Propaganda often includes information that is often one-sided or not true in nature. What does this mean? A few key ways AI is used in propaganda would be mass content creation of persuasive deepfakes, AI creating videos showing someone saying something they didn't say, automated dissemination through bot networks, and lastly, automated censorship. This is very important. Authoritarian regimes using machine learning to scan and automatically remove online content they deem unfavorable, making censorship more widespread and effective. We know YouTube uses AI algorithms and AI programs in order to see if you violated community guidelines, for instance. Now, we've always had an issue with bots spreading information if you look at all the election cycles as far as the political sphere. However, Elon Musk just recently on X exposed propaganda accounts showing that they were created in other countries. Now, these bots were affecting things happening here in the United States. That's a problem. Then you have political channels with AI hosts in a talking head format spewing propaganda talking points. Now, this has made its way into the UFO and science world, depicting Michio Kaku and Avi Loeb talking about the interstellar comet or alien tech, depending on what side of the conversation you fall on, 3i Atlas. Could these be government-controlled accounts or just a person having fun in his bedroom? Now, you can tell by the comments depicted on some of these videos that this tactic is working to fool a percentage of these viewers. Now, obviously, the public figures depicted in these videos could step forward at any time to disprove these AI videos and to disprove the statements being made. But think about it. What if they couldn't speak for themselves? Like, for instance, if they happen to pass away, these comments and statements would be part of a historical record. At that point, it'd be hard to disseminate what was AI and what wasn't. Now, this is a way that it could fool you going forward. Now, think about this. Now that AI counterpart has gained your trust and credibility and could be used for misinformation on its own, a totally fictional AI personality. To show you by comparison, here's a video of Avi Loeb speaking on a national news outlet in regards to 3i Atlas.
That's why I'm skeptical on this whole object being of alien origin.
Well, this is a strange question because whoever asked this question is skeptical because of ideas that have nothing to do with what we know about physics. We don't know if it's possible to travel faster than light. In fact, Einstein's theory of relativity says it's not. So the person who asked the question says, why couldn't they discover faster than light travel? Well, because as far as we know, it doesn't exist, okay? And the second is wormholes. As far as we know, it doesn't exist. We don't know.
And to compare that, here is an AI-generated Avi Loeb video speaking on the same subject.
Rewrite everything we think we know about interstellar visitors. Just captured on the 11th of November, 2025, barely 3 days ago, these stunning exposures reveal a ghostly expanding ring encircling the coma of comet 3i Atlas, alongside a sunward antitail that is stretching out like a cosmic finger pointing right back at the Sunday.
With these two videos side by side, you may be able to tell the difference here in the moment. But if you ran across this AI-generated video online, you too might be fooled into thinking that this was something that Avi Loeb actually said. That's a problem. And of course, if you look at these videos side by side, you may be able to pick which video is the fake video. However, if you see this video in your YouTube feed, you may not be able to determine in the moment that the AI video was actually AI. This is evident in some of the comments that have been posted here. Take a look. Now, here's the scary part. This could and likely will evolve from human-assisted AI propaganda to a much more powerful automated effort by AI alone. Now, what can you do about it? Anything deemed AI slop or propaganda, report the video. Leave comments advising others that this is AI created content and recommend they report it as well. Now remember, AI is in its infancy and has already mastered the art of manipulation. We have to stay vigilant and fight back until we gain the tools to help us with auto detection in our fight to keep AI in its place. Let's keep the conversation going in the comment section of this video. Please share, like, and consider becoming a subscriber. This has been a social bit. More to come. Talk to you soon. All right, guys. So I wanted to show that because I thought that the overall message is pretty impactful, right? And I know the internet speeds were probably kind of slow, so it's a little stuttery for you. You can find the full video right over on my page at Social Dig, and just think about what you just saw, right? You saw an Avi Loeb clip of actual, real Avi Loeb on the news speaking about Three Eye Atlas at a time where it's, the popularity is pretty high. You have a lot of people searching Three Eye Atlas on the internet and wanting more information. And they're running into these Michio Kaku and Avi Loeb AI generated pages where if you look closely in that AI video, like I said, you can go find that on my page, youtube.com/at Mr. Rob G. You're going to see that, for instance, the book in the background that says Avi Loeb, you can barely read it because AI couldn't regenerate the letters. You'll notice his clock in the background does not move at all, and actually can't even really see the numbers. But someone has used a pretty good AI platform in order to recreate Avi Loeb's voice. The way he pronounced certain words was on point, way better than a lot of AI that I've seen. That's troubling because, as I said in the video, this is currently human assisted AI. So you have human beings sitting there, setting this up and posting this stuff. Now imagine if it gets to a point to where AI can do this on its own, where it can on its own choose a public figure, recreate a message, propaganda once again, and then put that out there. There were so many people, a lot of people caught that this was AI. If you look through the comments and I don't even recommend, you go into the video because then you're supporting this BS. That's why I didn't post any links or show you what the page was. But you'll notice that there were a lot of people in the comments that did know this was AI, and they definitely made a point to say it in the comments. But there were just a handful of people, more than you would hope, that were in the comments believing this was Avi Loeb. And so for those people, whatever that AI generated Avi Loeb was saying, they were taking that information to the bank. Very dangerous. There's political channels out there that are doing the same thing. Totally fictional hosts. Like I'm sitting here now, totally fictional though, talking whatever points they get fed into their AI into the system, which is once again something dangerous. Because if you allow, say for instance, someone credible introduces you to an AI counterpart, which is essentially what I was talking about. If you give that AI counterpart any credibility, then it can be used on its own later on down the line because it's gained your trust to feed you misinformation. So I think we're in a dangerous place. I think the AI propaganda war has begun, and I just think people have to really be on the lookout. Anytime you see any of those AI videos, and I know I do now, anytime I see an AI video, I hit the report button. I tell it to not recommend this type of content to me because it's just, the ways that it could be used are not usually good. Most AI videos that you've seen have misinformation in them, whether it's just the creator or the person that put the video together didn't have all the right information, so it was accidental, or if it was purposely done, in a way to shift the narrative. So they have Avi Loeb talking about ghostly rings around Three Eye Atlas, and Three Eye Atlas is showing signs of alien life and things, and he's not saying any of this. So hopefully he does something about that, gets that stuff taken off of YouTube, because it's getting too good side by side, even though you can tell barely which one was real from fake. If you just get the fake one in your feed, you may not know. That's where the problem comes in. So let's see. Yeah, Jules, for sure. Thanks for the pointers on how to tell the fakes, Brother G. And yeah, the thing is that, when we had our guest come on the other night and was saying, hey, I saw Michikaku kind of say this thing, and I had to stop him for a minute and say, hey, there's Michikaku fake videos out there. And I think you might have likely seen one of those, because it was something Michikaku would never say. And, if there's people that we know being fooled about that, yeah, integrationing, that was first one was real. The first Avilo video was real. Second Avilo video was AI. Insane. And like I said, I know it was skipping around a little bit because of the internet. If you go to my page, you'll see it and you'll be able to watch it clearly. But ABWC, Mr. Ron, my favorite Catholic radio show, trying it out. An AI priest to answer questions. It got crazy fast and evil. I can believe that. There's no place when you allow AI to be the thing that speaks to the people. I don't think there's any space for that. I don't think there's any room for that on any level ever. And so they're already doing it at this level of AI. They're doing it now. And I think we should never have a situation where AI is delivering information to the people, because the information that's being delivered can be altered at any point, and it's just a slippery slope, and we should stay away from that. With that being said, let's go ahead and wrap it up with try to get in at least one news story here tonight on UFO and Weird News of the Week.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? I've just been handed an urgent and horrifying news story. But I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
All right, UFO and Weird News of the Week. Living Nostradamus warns of major event in coming months that would shake Britain and entire world. He predicts this event will likely happen between late 2025 and early 2026. And you know how I feel about predictions and dates, but a man who has been proclaimed as the living Nostradamus has warned that a major event will be felt through Britain and the wider world. For those of you who've missed the memo on the existence of a living Nostradamus, not to be confused with the original Nostradamus, he is Brazilian influencer Athos Salome. Salome has built up a sizable online following across the past couple of years and claims to have foreseen numerous key world events, such as the COVID-19 pandemic, the death of Queen Elizabeth II, and cyber attacks at the Paris 2024 Olympics. And his latest warning has seen the 39-year-old predict a major upheaval for the British royal family in coming months. So what does Salome believe is on the cards for King Charles and company? During an interview with Mail Online earlier this year, Salome predicted the UK monarchy would experience a major event, possibly tied to the health of a key member at any time between late 2025 and early 2026. Salome did not divulge any further details about what could happen, but did suggest the event would mend a couple of fractured relationships in the family. The result, a symbolic return to the UK and a fragile truce with King Charles and Princess Eugenie. Prince William, however, remains a fracture point. He continued, making reference to Prince Harry and his family, who currently reside in California. He also believed an end of the alleged rift between Harry and William was on the cards, but cautioned that it would take place in the distant future and involve their children. Quote, full reconciliation will come from the next generation. William and Kate's children rebuilding ties with Archie and Lilibet, Salome predicted. But that's still years away. There's too much entangled karma, and this is not the time. 2025 has already been a rocky year. Charles' younger brother, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, being stripped of his royal titles of alleged links to convicted SO Jeffrey Epstein. Meanwhile, the monarch himself continues to receive treatment for his cancer diagnosis. However, the royals can take some solace in the fact that not all of Salome predictions have turned out to be true. For example, Salome believed the year 2025 would see genetically modified humans, a manufactured energy crisis, and humanity's first contact with aliens. We might have been close on that one. Now there's still 2 months of the year to go, but we're yet to see any of the above happen, unless you believe Avi Loeb's conclusion about Comet 3i Atlas. So I guess we'll find out in a couple months. That's where I think you have people who make predictions. I don't know if you give them a particular title, if you call them, I don't know if that he would consider himself a psychic or I don't know, fortune teller, right? I don't know if maybe that fits. But anytime you get someone that predicts dates, the dates always seem to come and go without any event. That's why I don't put a lot of stock in dates. Just like here in the ufology community, there's a lot of people talking about 2027 being something, and we might see 2027 come and go. Hopefully we get some motion from the Age of Disclosure, which just came out, which is still something I recommend people go see either now. I think the hype is kind of blown over on it. Maybe you can wait until it's free on a streaming service, or go watch it at a friend's house. But I think 2026, just on the media side of things, is going to be pretty huge. We know Steven Spielberg has a movie coming, supposedly releasing in 2026. There's another director, I can't think of his name at the moment, releasing a extraterrestrial-based film as well. I'm sure there's documentaries to come. James Fox is talking about new information that he has on the Virginia case from Moment of Contact that he's going to be doing something with. So I anticipate a lot of media coming. Hopefully we get other things going. So with that being said, I want to thank everybody who came in tonight to talk humanity with our guests. Thanking Dr. David Gruder for coming in, being awesome, giving us perspective, letting us lead with some good information, moving the needle. Most of all, I want to thank you guys out there and the man you hear right here, Rambo Fatal. He's the man who tells us each and every weekend, never say never again, because yes, we all know and we all understand the phenomena is real. So with that being said, if you enjoyed the show tonight, make sure you show some love. Hit those like buttons and put your horns up. We also want to thank our viewers online, the listeners on terrestrial radio, anywhere and wherever you may be listening to this. Thank you for tuning your frequency to Spaced Out Radio, where we do what we do best. With that you ask, we own the night. Remember, this show is copyright Spaced Out Radio, SR Media Ventures Limited. It has been a pleasure once again serving you as your host. I am Mr. Rob G. This is the After Hours Radio Show. And to all you space travelers out there, it's not a goodbye nor a farewell. However, you can best believe we'll be right back here doing the same thing, same time, same place. We'd love to see you back here. Make sure you show some love to not just yourselves, but each other. It's the only way it's going to work. Thanks for coming in tonight. Love you guys. See you next time. All right. Great show, guys. We really appreciate you guys coming on in. Not sticking around too long. I'm going to go ahead and get up out of here. You know how we shut it down. We want retribution. That's how we do it. We're going to do it again tonight. Have a great rest of your night, guys. Take care. See you tomorrow night. Later.
Cause we want retribution. Oh yeah, we want retribution. Oh yeah, we want retribution.